Hello, GD seekers. My name is Itri Papa Nicola, and I'm a GD instructor. I have been helping students get their GD for the past, 20 years, give and take. And I'm jumping on here today to make a video for students that are working towards their GD, or they're planning on working towards their GED and their high school equivalency. And I wanted to talk about the biggest strategy to passing the GED exam with, as few weeks of preparation as possible, and with the best preparation for all components of the GED possible. I teach a 12-week course online, and my students are able to pass all components of the GED within 12 weeks. So we get math, science, social studies, and language arts done in a very quick amount of time. And that's my strategy today. A lot of people think that you have to review all of your pre-algebra, algebra, geometry, trigonometry for math, for science, your biology, your chemistry, your physics, for social studies, going back to your economics, the history, and then language arts, the reading, all the grammar, the writing portion. But there is a way to pass the GED by using a very simple technique. And that is being able to read the information given to you in order to answer each and every question presented, no matter if that is a math or science, social studies, or a language arts exam. The information is provided to you, and that is the key. And I'm going to demonstrate that today and show you how to do some questions from each and every one topic. So then you can, trust this process and try to use it. Like I said, my students have been doing this for a long time, and I wanted to share that information with more people. So the first thing that I want to share in here is our math reasoning page on GED.com. So obviously, when you go to GED.com, there is a practice exam. There's a lot of practice exams on GED.com that you can actually take through this website, and they're very similar to the official exam. So if you are wondering about what books to study, this would be the platform that I would try to be in as much as possible. And the goal here is to take practice questions to practice for the GED exam. So when you practice for an exam, when you are preparing for an exam, instead of doing a lot of content review, you want to prepare yourself for the test in itself, and do test taking strategies. Time yourself, do 10 questions a day, right? Put a timer at 10 minutes, 10 questions for 10 minutes. You do it on a daily basis. At the end of the week, you have about 50 questions. At the end of the month, you've done about 200 questions. So 12 weeks, it's actually a 3-month period. And so if you do 200 questions a month, after 3 months, you've done about 600 questions, which has created that familiarity for the exam. So you do want to go inside this platform and see exactly what the questions are going to look like, rather than studying a lot of material, and using that reading component as the key. So for example, with the math, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to do some examples on the math just to give you a little bit of feedback. So this is how the GED website looks like. It has this like a blue frame. It has a calculator. There's a possibility to flag the question, and then you can come back to it. There's a formula sheet that opens up. So everything is provided to you. You don't have to memorize, the slope and the quadratic formula and the surface areas and the volumes. Everything is given. So we have a question here. And the question is stating that this pretty much like painter rented a wallpaper steamer at 9 a.m. and returned it at 4 p.m. So you want to figure out, from 9 to 4, how many hours went by. So we have 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it seems like 7 hours went by, and they paid a total of $28.84. So we know in mathematics, there's 4 operations: the addition, the multiplication, the subtraction, and the division. And so when you see word problems, a lot of the students say, when I see word problems, like I struggle, I have to, translate them, I have to interpret them, I have to use the 5-step rule. We just have to do something with the 2 numbers given to us on those word problems. Usually 2 numbers, we take them, either we add, we subtract, multiply, or divide those numbers. So we have 7 hours here. The total was $28.84. So I believe if we take the $28.84 here and we divide it by the 7, then that should tell us how much are we paying per hour. So I'm going to go to my calculator here. 28.84 divided by 7 gives me something that's $4.12. We see the $4.12 in the answer. The GD is multiple choice primarily. So a lot of times, if we can't find the answer, we can use the answer in our advantage to figure out, what the answer is going to look like and verify it. So that's this question right here. And we came up with 412. So I'll go to 412 here, and I want to go to the next question. Next question is an algebra question. Most of the GD math is algebra. It's busy work with substitution, elimination, variables, numbers, word problems. So nothing that requires memorization. It's more application, right? So here we have 36x minus 8y squared. This is just an expression. So when we have x and y, sometimes we get a little flustered because we don't know what the x and the y is. Well, we don't have to know what it is because they tell us everything we need to know. They give us the x, they give us the y. We are going to replace the x where the x is in the expression and the y where the y is in the expression. So what you end up doing here is you're multiplying 36 by the 3. And we'll put all of that on the calculator, minus 8. And then instead of y, you are replacing it with -6. And then the y is squared. And then after that, some students think they need to know how to do exponents, fractions, multiplication, division. But the calculator, either on hand or the one in the screen, you get to choose which one you want to use during the GED exam. So when you go to a testing center, they will ask if you have one that you want to use, or you want to borrow one from the center, or you want to use the one on the screen. So I'm plugging everything here in the calculator, all in one row. I'm not doing separately. I'm not using PEMDAS order of operation or more about negatives or decimals or fractions. I'm just throwing everything on the calculator, -180. I see -180 as my final answer, and then I move on, right? So I'm not using a lot of content. I'm using a lot of conceptual understanding, right? I'm reading it, I'm finding out the information that it's given to me, I put it together, and then I move on with this particular scenario, right? So that's a glimpse of what the math looks like. Let's take a look at next and see what is the science going to look like. Are we going to see a lot of biology, chemistry, physics, anatomy, or can we use reading comprehension for the science as well? So let's go back to my sharing screen here. So we are at GED.com, which is the website, and it says science practice test. And I want to see what I'm going to see when I take the official one. So there is, this question right here. We don't need to know earth science or anything about earthquakes or volcanoes or anything like that. We just want to take a look at this picture. read what's going on here and make an educated, pretty much like analysis. So it says that the map shows Earth's continents, the outlines of the plates that make up Earth's outer shell, and the locations of their volcanoes. So who are those things? Well, they are indicated here in the picture. So you can see here, right in this box, what each one of them is. So everything with yellow is an active volcano. Anything with black is the boundary line. And then the red is the equator. If you're not sure what each one of those mean, you don't have to worry about it because it's already in the picture, it's given. We want to know what we need to do with this picture. So we take a look at the question, and the question says, which conclusion can be reached from the information on the map? So conclusion, meaning what's true? What can we say about this, right? And so what do? Well, we're going to read every option. Again, the key is reading, not to panic and say, okay, I don't know about volcanoes. I don't know what's going on, the patterns. We're just going to read every option and see which option makes sense and verifies the picture. So A says volcanoes are scattered randomly across the Earth. Well, randomly means they're all over the picture, but they're not quite all over the picture. I don't see volcanoes in the water, by the water as much, right? So you can say, well, what about volcanoes right here? No volcanoes there. So randomly means everywhere. Volcanoes are only located along the edges of the continents. For B, I like that because these are the, the edges here. But it says only. Only means that's only there, nowhere else. And you're like, well, what about this one right here, right by the water? What about this other one right by the water? So we don't like words such as only, always, all of the above, none of the above. Those are things that tell us that there's no exceptions of the rule, and that's really rare. But you can still see it in the picture. Everything is in the picture here. Ceases volcanoes are mostly located along boundaries between plates, mostly, meaning most of them are where the plates are. I like that. And then Desis volcanoes are distributed equally in the northern and southern hemisphere. So if I cut this picture in half, over the line, the number of yellow dots over the line is equal to the number of yellow dots under the line. We are seeing here there's way more over the line than under the line. There's a lot more up here than down here overall. We're not going to count the dots. So that's not the purpose here. So then we're going to say, well, then maybe most of the volcanoes are located along the boundaries between the plates. We can see them. We can see right here. They are where the boundaries are, most of them. And also, if you know a little bit about volcanoes, you don't need to, then you know that if the plates collide, then that's how we can receive a volcano. But you don't need to know that. The picture is telling us everything that we need to know. So that's how you make your decision with the science. This was not an earth science question or geography, right? It was just a picture. So if we go to the next question, same thing here too. It looks like a biology question, but we have this triangle. We have, as it says here, an energy pyramid, how the energy goes from producers to primary consumers, to secondary consumers, to tertiary consumers. So from the producers to first, second, third. And then again, the question says, which statement correctly describes the flow of the energy through the pyramid? So we have to read and see which answer makes sense on the picture. So they're not asking us to know about this energy distribution, and they're not going to do that on the science nor any of the other concepts. They're going to give us what we need, and then we just have to use it properly. So you have to be a little patient. You have to read the options and find the best option. So A says all of the energy from the lower levels available to the top levels. B says producer level directly provides energy to all 4 other levels. Well, the producer is directly connected to the primary consumer. This is the border. So it's directly connected to that, not the other ones. So not all of the other levels. Also, we said the word all is not usually a good answer. The highest amount of energy is transferred between levels that contain consumers. So they're saying the most amount of energy is where there are the consumers, but we see the most amount of energy is on the producers. People that work at a factory are the producers. There's a lot more people working at a factory than an office. So you can think of it that way, but also that spot in the pyramid, the bottom part, which is producers, is the highest amount, is the bigger spot. And then D says energy is directly transferred from primary to secondary. So this piece right here transfers energy to this piece right here directly. Primary to secondary, then secondary to tertiary. So definitely option D is the best option and the correct option here. So as you can see, it's all about the reading of the component in here. So, okay, let's take a look at the next big thing, which is our language arts. So I'm going to project my screen in here and show you how, what if we went to the language arts and the social studies exams. Obviously here, the reading will be even more beneficial because it's all about interpreting the data and the scenarios given to you. So let's say if we have language arts, in the language arts exam, overall, this is the largest exam. It has like 3 main components. It has a reading component, it has a grammar component, and a writing portion. The writing portion is worth very few amount of points. So a lot of my students are able to pass the language arts without even writing much on the writing portion. You can still pass the language arts by being well fit at the reading and the grammar. And then when it comes to the writing component, which they give you about 45 minutes there, you can do your best and try to create like a some paragraphs on the buildup of your writing, maybe like a 3-paragraph, like quick essay with the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. But don't stress too much about, perfecting that, because we can gather enough points through the reading and the grammar. So how would the language arts and the social studies look like? They're going to give you a bunch of stuff on one side of the screen, and then they can ask you questions on the right side of the screen, and you won't have like to read a lot for one question. So what you want to do here is you want to read it one time, slow down, and then you know that you're going to be using a lot of questions based on the reading passage that was given to you. So you read a passage for 4 or 5 questions, not just for one question. So for example, in here, there is a reading. It says lessons on the savannah. And I'll read it for you guys just to kind of like see what I would do. And you can see the pages. So that way you're not flipping pages through here. Everything is on the left, and then the questions are on the right side. So it says, I'm not so worried about time anymore, I said. He smiled. Good, you're making progress. Come with me. He led me to a tree not far from the camp. You must climb as high as you can and find a comfortable branch where you can look out over the savannah. He handed me the water gourd. You will need this. I took the gourd. What about you? I will be too busy to drink, he said. I didn't know what he meant by this, but I climbed the bone-dry tree anyways and found a large branch near the top that was comfortable. Can you see the grass of the savannah? So Pete yelled up to me. Yes, I shouted back. Good. What else do you see? Page 2. Here we go again, I thought. I looked carefully. Skimmering waves of heat created mirages in the distance. I saw 3 copias within a half mile of each other. Trees dotted the landscape, and there were several small amounts of animals grazing on the dry grass of the savannah. About 150 yards away, a herd of zebras took advantage of the shade of the acacia tree. A few hundred feet past the herd were a few more trees, and underneath them were 2 rhinoceros sleeping. I told Sir Pete what I saw. Watch me, he said, and remember, this will take some time. If you lose track of where I am, look at the zebras and work your way back to where you last saw me. I will, I said, still confused about what was going on. So Pete walked briskly out into the savannah, then stopped. He slipped off his sandals and shuka, then reached down for something I couldn't quite see and rubbed it all over his body. When he was finished, he lay down and rolled on the ground, then got back to his feet. From head to toes, he was covered with red dust and blended in perfectly with his surroundings. And then you can see here a couple of reference words. Kopje, it's a rocky hill, and then shuka, it says it's a Ma word for a decorative length of cloth worn in parts of Africa. So just to help you out. And then he continues on. So we have page 3, and we have page 4 and page 5. So the first thing that you want to do is, just like I read the first 2 pages, you want to read it all the way from page 1 all the way page 5. You get a main idea of what's going on, and then you try to figure out what is some of the supporting evidence in here. And then you go to the question, and the question says, which quotation from the passage supports the idea that Sir Pete is teaching the narrator a skill that requires patience? So we have these 2 people here. One is teaching the other how to be in the savannah. We know the topic of the passage is always going to be located in the title. So the title here is lessons, from savannah. So when you see that, that is pretty much like your main topic. So if we wanted to find out what the topic of a passage is immediately, that's something that you want to do, and say, what is the the title here, Lessons on the Savannah. We saw there were 2 people. One was the educator, the other one was trying to learn. So now we want to find one of those 4 quotes here that will show that the master, the teacher, is teaching the narrator a skill that requires patience. So A says, I will be too busy to drink. B says, each step was exaggerated and painfully slow. When we were boys, we practiced with rhinoceros when they were asleep. And D, the tribe taught me to stalk many other animals. So there is a good representation here, and something to keep in mind. Sometimes if you're not sure what the correct answer is, you can always go to the answer explanation up here. So that's what I like about working on GED.com. And you can see here, it says option B is correct. If you correctly selected this response, you likely recognize the word exaggerated and the phrase painfully slow point to how the activity is drawn out over an extended period of time and therefore requires patience. So what requires patience? Each step was exaggerated, so it took a long time, and then painfully slow needed a lot of patience. Being too busy to drink, I don't think that requires any patience. C says, when we were boys, we practiced with rhinoceros when they were asleep. I don't know how much patience that required. And then the tribe taught me to stalk many other animals. It requires patience there because you're stalking them, you're watching them, but teaching that is not something that you're applying. So let's take another look at this same passage. It says, which fact did the reader infer about the narrator? So as we are reading about these 2, the narrator is the one that's learning from obviously the master. So he says he's experienced in working with animals. So that's an inference, an assumption we can do. He's in a hurry to reach his next destination. He was nervous about traveling in the savannah, or he was raised in the city rather than in the wilderness, which wouldn't be the best assumption. So we can see here that would be the best as far as like the master assuming for the narrator. So you can see D is the correct option here. So that would be, what can the master infer about the narrator, that maybe he's raised in the city, so he doesn't know much about animals. And the narrator about the master would be inferring that he's experienced in working with animals. So then if you are between, the first option and the last option, then you go back to the question and say, what am I making an assumption about? And it says, well, what fact can the reader infer about the narrator? So the reader is you reading the passage, and the narrator is the person that's following the master in the savannah to learn from the master. So the narrator seems to be a city person, and going into the wilderness has no idea how to deal with those animals. If they did say inferring about the, maybe the master, or Supit, as they named him here, then we would say that yes, he's experienced in working with animals. So the language arts component is exactly like this in the social studies. It's very similar to this as well, because it relies on passages and facts on those passages that you actually incorporate within your analysis and your studying. So this was a glimpse of how the GED looks like. And a lot of times we spend months and months and years studying our geometry, our advanced algebra, our biology, our chemistry, our reactions, our Newtonian laws, the microeconomics, the politics, the history, all the grammar, but you have to keep in mind that this is a GED test and you are doing test prep. So when you are preparing for the exam, you want to see the exam. You want to practice with exams before the official exam. Even if you do small chunks of questions, use that strategies I spoke today, 10 minutes, 10 questions a day, set a timer next to you. Lower your stress and anxiety by doing that, by setting a timer and seeing how many questions you're doing within the time frame that you actually set for yourself, and then improve on that on a daily basis. And within 3 months of practicing this, maybe you can divide that up like I do with my students. We spend 1 month on the math, 1 month on the science, and 1 month on the language arts and social studies, since those two are interconnected. And that is our prep. It might take a little longer, but it will lead you in the right direction. It'll teach you how to be a good test taker. And when you take those big exams, that's what matters. And at the end of the day, you will end up like one of those students in my background here celebrating this. And this is not just about the GED, but you can actually learn how to be a great test taker for the future, because we all know after the GED comes, college placement exams and exit bachelor exams and the GRE to get us to pursue our master's. So we're always taking tests, but prepping for a test properly and lowering our stress and anxiety and expecting what to expect, and mentally being ready for the template of the exam is key to passing any exam, but specifically the GED and the way this is templated. So I wish you the best of luck in this preparation. And hopefully you learned something from this video as far as how to start the process and to be confident to look at these questions and take practice exams before you take your official exam. So until next time, best wishes. Bye.